Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to the Pallavan Learning Systems webinar on the future of learning. Hopefully you can all hear me and see me okay. Any issues that you have throughout, please use the chat function rather than the audio function, just to make sure we're not disrupting the panelists' discussions. This webinar is part of a research initiative of Pallavan Learning Systems, where we're trying to connect and draw on the expertise and experiences of educators like ourselves to help us think about and design learning experiences that will help learners actualize their potential. Now, this is the second webinar, and the first webinar was exploring how we can nurture our learners during the COVID pandemic. This webinar, we want to focus a little bit more on how to move forward, what the future of learning will be as we move out of the pandemic and into our futures. And for this, we are very lucky to have 5 wonderful panelists who I'd just like to introduce to you now. The first panelist we have from the Doon School is Mr. Kamal Ahuja. We have from the Pallavan School, Jalivar, Mr. Mehtab Siddiqui. From the Paradise Valley Private School in Oman, we have Ms. Julie Schaefer. From the Sindhya School, we have Ms. Samita Chaturvedi. And from the Royal Academy in Bhutan, we have Mr. Penjor Gali. Now, to stimulate this discussion, hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the article that Mr. Arun Kapoor shared titled The Future of Learning. In this, he discussed some of the opportunities and the challenges that the pandemic and the disruption to education or to learning that has happened because of that have presented to us. So how I'd like to start our discussion is to be able to myself share a few relevant thoughts and ideas taken from this article. Again, before I do that, I'd just like to remind participants to make sure their audios are muted and to welcome participants at any point if they have questions to please use the chat function. As what we will do towards the end of the webinar is go through those questions and see if we can put as many of them as possible to the panelists. So, to start the discussion, I'd firstly like to introduce myself again. I'm Miss Joella Lynch. I was a teacher at the Royal Academy for 4 years, and I now teach science at a secondary school in the UK. So I'm just going to share for a few minutes my perspective on the future of learning from a UK teacher's perspective, especially linking it to the article that Mr. Arun Kapoor had shared. For me, one of the biggest takeaways from that article was thinking about learners and their ability to learn independently, or the skills that they might need to be independent learners. In the UK, we had to react quite quickly to the fact that schools were going to close. And in my opinion, I didn't feel like we were particularly prepared to then help learners continue learning to the best of their ability. We went, in a lot of instances, to automatically using online platforms and setting worksheets and allowing learners to watch videos, which was very reactionary for the learners and from the teachers also. What we were finding was that students were struggling to engage with activities because they had never really seen themselves as independent learners. So they found it quite difficult to engage in the activities in the way that we wanted them to, without the teacher or their classmates being there to prompt them or guide them along the way. So the uptake that we got from students was quite low initially, and it still, in my opinion, has stayed quite low in terms of the way students are able to work right now. With the students that I have are secondary school students, so they're 11 to 16-year-olds. We found that with younger students, there's been much more uptake of trying to do virtual classrooms. So teachers and students meeting on platforms like Zoom or Google Meet, and using those types of technology to try and simulate a classroom, but doing it online. Again, from teachers that I've spoken to, that's had varying results. A lot of it is dependent on the support students have at home. That is playing a big role in how students are able to engage with learning material. And I think a lot of parents or carers, even older siblings, were feeling overwhelmed by the depth and the breadth of work that students had to do, because it felt like that in some respect there was not a streamlined approach from different subjects and different educators or schools to help students pull together what it was that they were learning. So from this, my biggest, I guess, thoughts for the future of learning for me are thinking about the technologies that we use and how best to prepare the students to use them effectively. I feel that there are some great platforms and technologies out there, but I don't think teachers or students actually have the skills on the whole to utilize them as well as they could do. I also feel that the shift to online learning or platform learning or distance learning has, from my experience, segregated the subjects or the domains even more, and it's focused mainly on the academic and the cerebral development of students. And I found a huge drop in the ability to work on students' social or emotional development also. So for me, that was a huge takeaway, is thinking about how we can be using these technologies, these platforms, in order to make sure that we are looking at the holistic development of the student and also allowing them to engage across domains and across subjects. So with that, that was my main takeaways from that article. What I'd like to do, I'm going to go through the panelists in alphabetical order by school. So if possible, I would like to go to Mr. Camille Ahuja from the Doon School. And again, just 3 or 4 minutes, Kamal, what were your thoughts on the Future of Learning article? Anything that was relevant from your experience or in your context?
Thank you, Joanna. So yes, my name is Kamal Ahuja, and I am the Deputy Headmaster of the Doon School, Dehradun, currently also the Acting Head of School. I teach business management. As a school, we're an all-boys boarding school from grade 7 to grade 12, which means the age group is of our students from 11 to 17. It goes up to 18 also. So some of the key takeaways from the article, and there were 2 major takeaways when we went through it, and I'm joined by a team from my school also who are part of this conversation, and even that team was inspired by the article. The article inspired us to bring those people together so that we could brainstorm and reflect. So the first key takeaway was about holistic development, and the second one was about augmented learning, and collaboration being the focal point of both. So as far as the areas of physical, social, emotional, and spiritual development, the concept itself is something that we could very clearly relate with in the Doon School. And it was interesting exploring these 5 areas of development and how to balance them in the lives of our learners for a more wholesome education. Now, in this lockdown period, one of our key areas of focus has been delivering this holistic curriculum via the distance and online learning platforms that we have. So that, just like Dwella pointed about, the focus on cognitive development, on just teaching the subjects, we were very mindful of that. And of course, we were very mindful of that when we were doing this on a face-to-face level, when we were in school. But doing it on an online platform means we had to reinvent and reimagine a lot of things. So we also faced the same challenges. I mean, the learning curve was very steep. It was quite a trajectory for me and my colleagues. But over a period of time, and this is for about now, since 16th of March was when we actually sent our kids back home. As a boarding school, you're used to seeing them 24/7. And now you couldn't see them 24/7, but you just had to revolve a timetable where you had to put them for about 7 to 8 hours of engagement. So in order to do that, we started delivering a lot of portions of the curriculum in terms of co-curricular, extracurricular, but for us, they all meant the Dune School curriculum. It's all in part of your one curriculum. So our clubs, our societies, our publications, all of them went online. Our tutorial meetings began to go online. It took us some time, and it was done in a phase-wise and staggered manner. But having said that, the main elements of holistic development is also striking the right balance. And that is also mentioned in the article. I mean, each area of these development must complement each other. So after every 1 week, we would add something more to the program we were delivering online through distance learning. And we would reflect on how the components that we are adding, how do they complement each other? And this is a work in progress. We haven't arrived. We know we are going to continue evolving, and we will never arrive. We're also mindful of that. We will have to keep changing this, because what works this week may not work next week. What works for one age group may not work for the other age group. The other concept that we were really fascinated by was about augmented learning. And the concept of augmented learning has been very aptly described in the article, and how it not only has a new meaning in our lives, but also the challenges and opportunities that arise. So some important facets are that teachers now have to play a much greater role as facilitators. And students, of course, need to take greater responsibility for their own learning. I know we did set the tone about talking about them being independent learners. But it's one thing being independent learners. It's another thing being learners who are going to be accountable for their own success, at the same time curating their own success. And students as well as teachers at this point of time, I feel more than ever before, need to document their formal development as evidence. Now, we need to devise strategies. And like I said, collaboration is the focal point between both augmented learning and holistic development. We need to have a strategy of collaboration that is sustainable and dynamic. One of the key changes in the foreseeable future is the way online assessment is going to take place. The SATs are already probably looking at, the College Board is looking at how they want to do the SATs online. They haven't started talking about it openly, but they're already brainstorming about it. The advanced testing, the ACTs and all have already gone online a number of years ago. TOEFL is already online. IB is exploring the options. We know that Cambridge Board is very seriously looking at how they want to do online assessments. National and state level educational boards also are beginning to talk about it. I mean, their conversations right now are at online delivery in terms of content and curriculum, but they are also now beginning to foresee that in the near future, they need to have a very highly evolved system of how they can assess students. And they're being forced to reimagine it, which is amazing, because the fact that we can reimagine together is a wonderful opportunity. So this is also going to have a huge impact on mental health, spiritual health, and social relationships and other areas of educational domain, as again mentioned in the article. The role of parents and the community is going to change a lot. So as schools, we need to reach out to all of these stakeholders and establish a more proactive response to help everyone bridge the emotional and spiritual gaps that may exist within the system. So one of my colleagues who's also joined us as a member of this, he's more as a participant, Istimdad Ali, he shared an insight about an interesting research article on European education in the next 10 years. And quite a few experts mentioned that schools will be replaced by community knowledge centers by 2025. And this article was published before the pandemic actually even hit us. So again, you come to this concept now of knowledge communities. In a school, we've always, within this wonderful 70 acres estate that we have, we've always considered ourselves to be a knowledge community. But now we are realizing that this knowledge community is fast expanding. It's fast evolving. There's a lot of cross-pollination taking place. So right now in this webinar, it's a knowledge community. When you teach your children and they're in their respective homes, you have to shift from co-parenting. So one of the concepts of boarding schools is also about co-parenting. Now that shifted to co-teaching. So while the children were with us in school, we were their co-parents. Now that the children are back home, our students are back home, their parents have become co-teachers. How do you engage them? Of course, they can't actively lead the classrooms, but you also have to find ways and means where they can passively support learning. So I think that is the area of development for schools. Those are some of the challenges which are there. And I'm sure when we come back to the second part of this panel discussion, we'll be able to reflect upon those a bit more. Thank you.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you, Kamal. Some really, really interesting points there, definitely. And there's quite a few that I'd like us to come back to. Brilliant. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Mr. Mehtab Siddiqui from Pallavan School, Jalivar, again to have insights and discussion and thoughts on the article from Mr. Kapoor. Oh, can we just make sure we've
hello, sorry, my phone was muted actually. Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. And for me, actually, the whole article is a takeaway. It's not like 1 point, 2 point, or 3 points or something. Right from the starting, like the learning is a process and all. Even our school logo says, let us learn to learn. So the learning is a process, which is like learning is not only on behalf of the students, it's on also behalf of the teachers and educators also. So this learning continues and continues, and a big person has said that when you're dying, actually, you learn how to die, how you're dying actually. So this learning continues till you're dead. Apart from that, the most important thing which I learned and my took away is something which is a teacher development program, which is very important for in a context. Actually, it is contextual thing. The teachers who are available in Doon school may not be equal to the schools which in Jhalawar. So teacher development program is very important. Or not only teacher development means they have shifted from traditional teaching to online teaching, and they were not equipped. All of a sudden, online teaching has started, and we were the first school in our area to start the online teaching. We started on 27 March perhaps, and all the teachers were initially we trained the teachers and all. But apart from that, what I would suggest that we design something that we registered the teacher in online teaching technique. Actually, what the traditional teaching they have learned, that is okay, but again online teaching techniques they need to be imparted, and they need to be like registered and all. Apart from that, many teachers do not have the required technology, and since we are in a small town in Jhalawar, and many teachers also live in remote areas like 30 kilometers from Jhalawar and all, not only internet, and apart from that the mobile phone they are using to, for that actually we can provide them with, we can strengthen them with the latest tablet or laptops and all, so that they can use, because teaching on mobile is not that easy, because screen sharing, when they share the screen, it is also not very easy to look at. And apart from that, the other thing like we experience while teaching, like I'm teaching here as a PGT in sociology and history, and I teach 11 and 12. What I have observed, most of the students who were very good in the actual classroom are not performing well in the online. They are not like interested, or they feel it boring. So the learning is not equal for everybody. And even the students who were lagging behind in the classroom, in the actual classroom, they are performing very well. This is the thing which we need to look at, how to address this issue. But apart from that, we have this online teaching, live teaching is a different thing. But before that, actually, since 2017 or 18, I myself had started, I have created a WhatsApp group actually, in which the students used to post questions, and whenever I get time, I can answer the questions. This can continue till this is continuing till now, and this can continue even after COVID crisis, because this has worked a lot. Even a student is not understanding a concept or a paragraph in his her book, he's taking a snap and sending it to me, sir, please make me understand this paragraph. And whenever I'm getting time, like it's late in the, even in late night and evening, this is also a very good idea to continue the thing. Apart from that, capacity building of parents is also important in an area like ours actually, because most of the parents, like we have students from rural background and urban background also. There are students who are equipped with latest technologies and latest mobile phones and fastest internet, whereas there are parents who do not have latest mobile phones or internet speed. for that, apart from that, most of them are like, some of them are farmers also, some of them are doing business. They are not able to help their students, especially the helping the students of the younger kids is very important. Elder kids is okay, they are managing on their own, but younger kids, like I have my own experience. I have 2 kids, 1 daughter and 1 son. So whenever my son, who is in class 1, who was studying online, he was taking online classes, my wife used to sit with him. And again, the problem is with the mobile phones also. The parents who have more than 1 kid or 2 kids, and they have only 1 or 2 mobile phones in their homes, and they are also working. So managing this time, then we need to train and strengthen the parents also to how to manage, how to help their students in taking advantage of the online classes. Apart from that, most of the time when we are giving the assignments to their students, they were sending like taking pictures of their notebooks and sending in the group. All the pictures were coming in the picture gallery, and it was confusing whose answer is who's, like they're forgetting the name, writing their names, and also these are the challenges actually we need to focus on, and we need to train the students and teachers also. And apart from that, teacher development, apart from that, actually the 5 area of development, which is very important actually. I have been a life skill trainer also and teacher also. I have an experience of teaching life skill education, and that comes under 5 area of development. In government schools also, training government school teachers. Mr. Kapoor has a huge project actually. We have trained around 4,000 teachers of government school in Rajasthan in life school education, reaching out more than 4 or 5 lakh students. So life skill education, we can, like weekly, we can organize a life skill class. It's not only that we can, in any case, what we were doing this time actually for life skill education or 5 area of development thing. Initially 5 minutes we are devoting on talking with the students, how you are spending time with your parents, you are helping your mother in the kitchen or not, how you are spending quality time with the teacher, like how we are utilizing the time when you are at home. But in addition to that, we can again organize a weekly class for life skill education or 5 area of development thing at all. So these are the, yeah.
Can I stop you there? Just because I feel like the points that you're making now, I'd like us to come back to in the discussion part in a moment, if that's okay. And then just to be conscious of time as well. But thank you. There are some, again, you brought some really brilliant points from the learnings from the article, and then also some challenges that I also have experienced myself with the WhatsApp photographs. I think are a very big. You have hundreds of photographs coming in without students' names on it. So simple, but creates a huge challenge for teachers, definitely. So brilliant, thank you. I've got a few notes there for us to come back to. Can I introduce our 3rd panellist, which is Miss Julie Schaefer from Paradise Valley Private School in Oman. So again, Julie, if you could just share with us some of your thoughts, your takeaways from the Future of Learning article.
Good afternoon or evening, as the case may be. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. I have 15 years experience in the field of education. I'm certified in the U.S. to teach special education, general education, and high school English language arts. I've worked as head of program, head of school, and head of department in 5 countries. I'm excited to be at Paradise Valley Private School as a special educator to help build and develop the first inclusive school in the country, as really truly needed program in this region of the world. So I'll move on to the article as we are limited on time. Mr. Kapoor has presented some very thought-provoking questions in his article. One of the things that I would like to point out that we really are focused on what skills or what do we need to develop in our students or our learners as we move forward and prepare them for a future in a very fast-paced, changing global society. We know that employers right now value creativity and the ability to solve problems over skills and general knowledge. So these things are the focus, or learning how to learn, essentially. that we feel needs to be addressed. At our school, as an inclusive school, we do have, it's a new school, so we have just 17 students. So that's given us a tremendous advantage. However, it has also very strongly highlighted some of the difficulties, especially with our special needs children. We do want to say that there are many countries that we look to emulate, as they have been on the learning journey to improve, update, authenticate, and make education relevant to each emerging generation of learners. So the accumulation of knowledge is now secondary, as I said, to the imperative of learning how to learn. Education has moved beyond rhetoric to seek to upskill our learners to create, analyze, and act upon findings gained through more interactive, engaging, child-centered, and authentic approach to 21st century education. We find that through our IB program, this does address or prepare us to interact in this manner. However, as a special needs school, we do have, or a school, inclusive school, sorry, we do definitely have a different dynamic than many schools. And in the interest of time, I'm going to skip down to that. We do have a full team of therapists. So we have OT, physiotherapists, speech pathologists, and myself providing social, emotional, and behavioral support. And we have found that we've had to adjust and amend ILPs. So the platform, the digital platform, has been a struggle. We have used Zoom. We've done a lot of private or personal sessions for our students in order to provide that differentiation that was mentioned earlier as a struggle or a difficulty. With 17 students, we can do that. In a larger school, that would not be an option. So one of the things that we found lacking was, again, the ability to address those special needs, which all of our students have in regards to social, emotional, spiritual, and the ability to develop those collaborative skills necessary in the future job market. We do need, as was mentioned earlier, a sustainable and a dynamic platform in order to adequately allow children to express their original ideas, to allow that creative thinking and provide that immediate feedback that is necessary for those very young learners. We haven't found the means to effectively do that, with the exception of one-to-one or 1 to 2 or 3 sessions, which again does not meet that criterion for sustainable. As schools grow, that the staff required to do that is not economically feasible. I think we'll all agree. We agree that a robust pedagogy should be fundamental to all school systems, and all children should be entitled to the best possible education and the opportunity to achieve their full potential. While incorporating augmented learning is important, and we respect, it cannot be assumed that it's globally relevant. Some countries cannot afford to provide access to technology in their schools. They may have limited or no access to the internet or electricity. So the future of learning will look very different for countries like Bangladesh, Nigeria, to those in Finland and Singapore, given the different types. So just like no education is one size fits all, we feel that this pedagogy has to be very customized or adapted to meet the needs of each school. And the training and possible additional support staff to implement programs such as VR learning may prove cost prohibitive and even more financially stable institutions. And finally, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say that was some good points to come back to again, but if your last point, go ahead and then.
Last point is that while some students thrive in the online learning environment, while others may feel they prefer the classroom environment, thriving academically does not mean that we are best serving the student, and we must be very careful to avoid focusing on the academic success at the expense of the other areas. So the student who prefers, especially in our case with a number of children, who would prefer interacting with their classmates through digital medium where they don't have to look directly at them, they don't have to interact directly with them. They may be more comfortable with that, but that is not helping them build the social skills or the collaborative skills that will be necessary in the future job market. So we do find that to be a very difficult problem and a big concern as we move forward. So we would like to see our students have the opportunity for all, but we want to ensure that the needs of all of our students are met and they are given sufficient opportunity to reach their full potential.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Julie. I'll hand straight over to Samita Chaturvedi from Scindia School. Oh, Smita, it seems like you might be muted there, sorry.
Yes.
Brilliant, we can hear you.
Thank you. So I'm Smita. I am from the Scindia School, which is a 122-year-old all-boys boarding school situated at the glorious Scindia Fort. And so in this time of pandemic, I can safely say that we are in one of the best places to be in, cut away from the crowds and in a way isolated and fortified in our campus. So that makes us slightly, a little more comfortable than the others in terms of our placements. Coming to the article, frankly, a lot of relevant points made here by Julie and Kamal, and I agree with a lot of things that they have said here. What I would like to add here is that we at Scindia look at education not only as a transaction of academic content, but empathetic and compassionate delivery of the academic content, definitely, but with a lot of emphasis on the softer skills, skill development in children, which have become very difficult in this time. This pandemic has resulted, or rather has acted like a catalyst because the change was coming. Education was moving from the old-fashioned classroom scenario to a digital world, more technology-based. But then everything seems to have just been fast-forwarded by this pandemic, which is very, very aptly put in the article. So it has brought about a tremendous change in the role of a teacher, not only the teacher, but the learner as well. Because there's a gradual, you can say, ownership, which was earlier largely with the teacher. Now it is a collaborative learning, which is the teacher, the learner, as well as the family which is around the learner. Because everyone needs to cooperate, needs to pitch in and ensure that the values which the school would have otherwise been able to teach the child, or rather the child would have picked up in terms of habits or behavior of, by observation, which is largely missing. So in the teacher's responsibility now is also to provide the right references for the child, because it is through these references that the child will be able to learn what we would have otherwise brought into our education. Education doesn't only mean academic transaction. It also means building of important life skills, as Julie also pointed out. And a lot goes into building those. for the students with special needs, very interestingly, as we say that teaching values has become difficult with the digital world, but I'm a very happy observation I wish to share with you. Some of our kids came forward, some of our students came forward to extend a helping hand for the students with special needs, and they recorded the learning material in their own voices to share with the students, because somewhere, absorbing the same content digitally was not that easy for those students. So somewhere where we feel that finer values are rather difficult to teach, we also have these surprises which come our way. So I feel that if we evolve as a team, if we share the best practices that we all develop in our own schools, if we try out in our own schools, we will find a way to help the students become what the ultimate aim of education is, to make better people, to make better human beings. So that's what I would like to add here. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic, Samita. And then I'd also now like to invite Penjor Gali from the Royal Academy to share again his thoughts around the future of learning from the article.
Hello everyone, my name is Penjor Gali and I'm from Royal Academy, Bhutan. So before, so our team, I was also part of a technology team, especially during this COVID. So we were in, my team was involved in identifying how we can communicate to our students and work on developing a process for not only communicating but doing assessment for students. And looking at the article by Mr. Kapoor, there are mainly three things that I was looking at, reflecting upon, was how we deliver the lessons and the learning and the assessment. So when we look at delivering, we were looking at how we can train our teachers to deliver the lessons to the students. So most of the things, issues that we faced during this time was our teachers were not equipped with the skills and expertise to do online lessons for the students. So there was a huge chunk spent by our team, time spent by our team to train our teachers. And the second thing that we were looking at was learning. So when we say learning, so I think the learning should be adapted to individual students, not only looking at the concepts that should be delivered to them, but it should be adapted to individual students based on their surrounding, their environment, and even their culture. So I think there is where Mr. Kapoor rightly highlights the importance of non-silo learning experiences and individual experiences for the students. And then the third one that was what I was reflecting on was the assessment. So how we do the assessment, how the teachers does the assessment, because we are either through the online, and not only how the teachers does the assessment, but also how the students self-assess themselves. So I think during this time, this period, it is very important that our students should learn how to assess themselves, not only depending only on the teachers to assess them, but also for them to develop that skills, how they can assess themselves. So these are the main things that I have been main takeaways from the article. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Penjor. So thank you, panelists. That was I've written down a huge amount of notes, and I feel like this is a topic we could probably spend another hour on quite easily. But I'm quite keen for us to get on to thinking forwards now, and to take some of the ideas and suggestions that you've mentioned, and actually think, what does that look like as educators for our students, for us as teachers? The challenges that we've come across and the opportunities that we have seen, during this pandemic time, are any of them worthwhile exploring to help shift that future of learning? I think it was Samita who very rightly put out that this has been coming for a while now, and the COVID pandemic has just been that springboard potentially that is allowing us to look at this in a lot more depth. For me, just very quickly, some of the key ideas that came out was thinking about online assessment. Can we really capture holistic development of learners through an online platform? As teachers, are we equipped to it? And as Penjo just pointed out, as learners, do they have the skills and the capability at this point to be able to do that? Maybe they have it better than the teachers do. Something that seemed to come out quite a lot was skills for teachers not necessarily having the skills at this point to utilize the online platforms maybe as well as they could do, and also access for students and for teachers. And one phrase that came out that I really liked was this idea of creating community knowledge centers. And this idea that, a community is also an online community. It's our community where we live, but it can also be cross-pollination across communities is something that we could potentially see more of. So what I'd like to do now, I'm conscious that I would like us to have time for questions from the participants as well at the end. And again, I feel like, we could talk for hours on this, but I imagine we have busy lives that we need to go to as well. So what I would like at this point is just again to invite the panelists, maybe at this point for 2 or 3 minutes, again, just to maybe further expand on how they envisage the future of learning. So is there anything that they, practices or strategies that you've seen happen now that you think, this is how I see the way that learning needs to go, or any maybe major challenges again that you would like to address? So again, we'll go through the same order. That's okay, and I'll invite back Kamal from the Doon School again.
Thank you, Joanna. So yes, it was quite interesting hearing everybody and sharing their inputs, and it's obvious that there are challenges which we all face which are similar, but there are also challenges which we face are different, because each school has a different demographics that it caters to. Every school has a different set of students, there are different sets of parents, and those parents also at a different learning curve. So I mean, for us, from our point of view, we are actually adopting a twofold approach. We're planning for the future based upon if a school like this can reopen. Boarding schools probably are the most well equipped to actually have students in a contained environment. And like Smita pointed out, if you're in the environment, if you're in a campus, you're in a gated community, you can actually run your school really well, and you can isolate it from the rest of the world to an extent. So if we can bring them back face to face, we can bring them back physically here, amazing. But in case we can't, then the likelihood of that is is something that we need to consider, because it's a reality that's facing us. What do we do when we move forward with the online platform? So we are working on a twofold approach, vis-a-vis face-to-face and online. We might also have a situation where we might be able to bring in a couple of our kids, and we may not be able to bring in another set of students. You might bring in a certain year group, and you may not bring in a certain year group. Again, you'll have to have blended learning. You'll have to have a mix and match between online and face-to-face. So that dual approach is something we are taking into consideration. One of the key areas which we also need to look at is this concept of distance learning. And we've used this phrase. In fact, I use it quite often myself in our communication. We say online and distance learning. We need to work on a way how this transition takes place from distance learning to outreach learning within your homes, which means in the past, when we were physically dealing with our students in a classroom environment, it was a contained environment. The teacher kind of moderated the environment of a classroom. But now we can't do that. That's very different. The home environment kind of decides how receptive the learner is going to be. So this means a much more coordinated approach between teachers, parents, and students. So how do you take this forward? One of the things to do is actually excite the parents to join the learning. Now, a lot of schools, a lot of educationists are very concerned about parents getting involved in this online teaching, because the parent might be sitting right behind. You're having a class, you don't know whose parents is joining and who wants to pass a comment. You really don't know that. It does seem a bit invasive, but on the other hand, it could be a wonderful opportunity to let parents also become lifelong learners and let them become a part of this process, and engaging them. So we would rather reach out to parents and say, join us on board. So we devised an indoor training, indoor fitness program. And when our sports department did that, they did that for people till the age of over 60. And when it came to my desk, I said, you've got something from 11 to 13, and then 13 to 17, and then this goes up and up and up. This is where you've got parents, you've got grandparents also. You've got to excite everybody with an indoor fitness regime. So the campus is like what you're seeing behind me. Okay, so it's a very green campus. We're so used to the outdoors. The only thing our boys can think about when they talk about sports is going out on the field and running or playing. But now they have to do this within the confines of a four-wall or a gated community. And how do you do that? So here was the opportunity. And also we're putting in a number of standard operating procedures in place, which cater to various domains. And of course, when the kids do come back to school, whenever they do, irrespective of what the guidelines and advisories are, we're going to have to wrap them around in a bit of cotton wool, whichever school it is, whether it's a boarding school or a day school. We're all going to do that. We're going to be extra cautious with what we are doing. The other thing that we are really working on is our timetable. And just like on this very platform, we are all in different time zones. We're also mindful that our timetable has to cater to students in different time zones. Right now, it caters to students in South Asia, Middle East, and India. But we've got kids who are right now in the United States. We've got kids who are in Europe, in different time zones. So of course, though our classes are recorded, but you also need that direct face-to-face interaction with them. So we're working around what we can do with all of those time zones. So the future of learning, if you were to ask me, has never been so uncertain as it is right now, but it's never been so exciting also. And you've got to take every opportunity as a blessing in disguise, and every challenge is something that I think we as educationists need to just take this to we just need to take this to the next level, and here it is staring us in the face. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Kamal. I think that's, you know, scary and exciting are almost the best combination. Straight away, I'll hand over to Mehtab from the Pallavan School. And just again, in 3 to 4 minutes, what do you think the future of learning will look like?
Hello.
Hi.
I agree with Kamal that we can call the students on alternate days, or call junior students one day, or senior students one day, or even we can flip on online and one day and offline one day. We are not sure what the guidelines of the government will be and when the school will start. Actually, we are not sure, even July, August or so. But what we are planning, and we are thinking that since the students are depending on online classes and online materials also, so we also need to strengthen the students how to use the internet material actually, because most of the time we have observed that the students, when we give the assignments to the students, they are taking it from internet, and all the information on the internet is not useful, not correct, or may not be valid and all. So these also need to be required, apart from need to be done actually. Apart from that, the teachers will create a discussion board actually, where the student will discussion among themselves and work as a peer-to-peer support. Like when a particular student is not understanding a concept, the other student may help and assess that student. And the teachers guide to provide feedback. Apart from that, the teachers also need to provide the feedback ASAP, feedback of the class and feedback of the student ASAP, and connect the topics actually from one topic to another, how the topics are connected. So here the parents' role is also important. If the parents is educated and they can support the students, their wards, they can also. We are planning on all these things. We are planning to strengthen the teachers, strengthen the students, strengthen the parents, that will to make it a success actually in coming future.
Brilliant, thank you, Mehtab. I'll hand straight over to Julie from Paradise Valley School again.
Mute. As I mentioned, as an inclusive school, there have been some struggles. Our therapists have had to become very articulate in expressing exactly what is needed in the therapies, as they are providing online videos for the parents to practice, and so that they can revisit these therapies more than 1 or 2 times. So this has been a benefit. Our parents are much more aware of the goal or the purpose behind each of these therapies. This has been a very good positive, and we will continue to ensure that the parents are very actively involved in these therapies and active participants to the extent that they are able to. However, we cannot expect the parents to have the expertise to develop the targeted skills. So we have had to amend ILPs, adjust the goals and the targets, given the limited access that we have to the children. For OT and physio, if you are not actually working directly with the child, it is very difficult to ensure proper movement, safety, etc. So we've had to simplify some of those activities to ensure that they are conducted safely and appropriately. We have developed much stronger relationships across the board with the families and caretakers of our learners. Our teachers have worked diligently to learn, build, and develop instructional methods to meet the needs of each child. As I mentioned, some have opted for individual virtual lessons for students as the need is indicated. However, this does mean that they're missing the socialization with their peers, which these students generally are the ones most in need of that opportunity. One of the things that we realized, as has been mentioned by the others, is the parent involvement, while wonderful, can be very difficult. We cannot expect dual income households to be available to supplement and support lessons. And our students, as young as they are not able to independently learn. We have many who have multiple children and may have just one device. So we've seen, even at our school in a more economically affluent area, that we are experiencing some of these difficulties even here. The idea of sharing is quite difficult. And serving ages 3 to 10, that ability to independently work is not a skill set that they have or developmentally appropriate for them. In the classroom, teachers are checking for understanding. They're constantly adjusting, modifying, giving children the opportunity through active questioning to problem solve, to figure out how they can correct where their errors are, so that they can become much better at creative thinking, at analyzing and evaluating their own work, even at the young age. This is a very important skill set, and this is quite difficult to do if you're in a group setting on a digital platform. Our students also, any students in the younger years, thrive on immediate feedback. That immediate feedback helps build that confidence, helps them, again, become effective at evaluating their own work. And as you walk by and say, you need to look at this again. What are you missing? What else needs to be there? And they're able to come up with it and fix it. This gives us an opportunity to give that feedback, to praise, gives them that social reinforcement as their friends hear them. It builds a sense of pride. So all of these are motivators that may not be present. So we agree that digital learning is very important. It's very important to the future, but again, it's probably better for those who are able to effectively communicate and write, such as we're doing here today, where there are comments that we can add, so that gives the participants an opportunity to be part of the discussion. Otherwise, it's a teacher orating and disseminating the information without the interaction of the child, and they will become bored. And our parents, I've spent most of my time working with parents, developing behavior programs, providing strategies for getting the children involved in their learning and keeping them on task, maintaining attention. So I'm spending more time working with parents than students, and that will continue. That will continue as we move forward. We are implementing a program to provide teacher support to ensure we have that continuity between school and home based on parent input, not just based on what we see as the need. And we will continue using the IB framework, and that will drive the pedagogy within our school. Go ahead.
That's really interesting, Julia. I was going to say, you bring up a good point there. I was just wanting to reach out to the participants and thank them also for their contributions. There's some really interesting questions and thoughts and comments coming up in the chat box also that links in beautifully with your point about how we need to make sure that conversations can happen through digital learning. So that was really brilliant. Thank you. I'd like to hand over now to Samita again from Scindia School, and just ask for her take on the future of learning. What strategies or practices have you been using, do you think might be the way forward?
Thank you. I would like to say that the future at the moment is a little uncertain, but the future of learning really isn't. The means may be different towards the same end. We all need to reach the same end through different means possibly. To begin with, technology in education didn't come suddenly for we at Scindia, because we have been using ICR, which has been incorporated into our learning system right from the year 2002. And gradually we have been increasing its involvement in curriculum, increasing the time, the syllabus that is covered through ICR. Also, the school teachers have been trained by Microsoft people themselves, and we have been using Microsoft Teams. So the security issues which come with Zoom, we did never face them. To begin with, the purpose of the way we started, I would say, was by addressing the needs of the learners, which in my opinion, are definitely engagement at this point, because out of the blue, suddenly the children were sent home, students were sent home, and they were caged into their own houses. So engagement was one. Then challenges, whether they were academic or otherwise, are needed by the students, which had to be addressed through different means. They had to be in a safe environment. They need peer interaction, because maximum learning takes place there. So the moment we began our digital classroom, we could see that there was a lot of peer interaction happening on the side, which initially I'm sure all of us faced the flip side of it. It was something which was a little unwelcome, but then it draws our attention towards teaching them not only classroom etiquette, but as well as cyber etiquette, which has become very important now, which I think till now we have really given it a backseat in our teaching learning process, or rather I say not a backseat, but a not so important place. There were other things which were always more important. So, the child needs technological upgradation, because this generation Z, as we like to call them, they are so well equipped that we have to really upgrade ourselves to keep pace with that. So here I want to add that, because we had technology interlaced into our curriculum and regular teaching, it didn't come as a shock to the children. It didn't come as a sudden surprise. So it very smoothly, there was a very smooth transition. We started with the pilot project of digital classes for the board classes, which is 10th and 12th. And after a week wherein we dealt with them and we saw the hiccups that were coming in, we gradually brought in the students of 7th to 9th and 11th joining in much later. I feel that now when we look at the education, like Kamal pointed out, that there are parents and grandparents joining in, because now these days, after the 15th of May, when we finished with the academic interaction, we have begun with these classes for music, art, fitness, yoga, debating, and story writing, or rather puppet storytelling through puppets, and a lot of creative work which has been happening. We find more and more involvement of the family there, and many a time, especially during the yoga sessions, you find the whole family there, practicing with the child. And I am then reminded that it was always said that you need a whole village to educate a child. So though we are using technology, but are we going back to the old times where we need a larger community which needs to pitch in to put in the right values, the right references? I'm going back again and again to the right references, because I feel that that is a very important aspect of education, because children learn more by seeing, more by watching, so they catch the right values there, which we cannot teach them. Also, when in terms of preparing to bring the children back, and I will repeat what Kamal said, that boarding school, somewhere we feel that that the students are better off in a safer environment, closed gated community where no outsiders come in. So we are looking at staggered arrival of the students. We are looking at, in fact, running 2 shifts of school within the school, staggering classes, staggering sports timings, meal timings, everything to ensure social distancing. So these are some of the things that we are working at. Having a large campus of 160 acres, it gives us a little advantage of space in terms of holding classes in different venues. So social distancing, we feel, may not be that difficult to achieve. Although knowing children, once they are back, they will forget everything that they have been taught, and we would have a tough battle on hands trying to separate them physically from each other. Those are some of the points that I want to add. Also, in terms of the glitches, the technological glitches that we face, or the kind of limited gadgets, electronic gadgets that families have, in order to address that, we also are holding some doubt clearing classes, 1 class per week for a subject, for a particular class, wherein any student who's missed out a class, who's facing some difficulty with an assignment, would have the option to log into that class and have a doubt clearing session with the teacher. Addressing the emotional needs or the mental stress that the children are facing at the moment, or it could be the parent, because we like to take the child and the parent as our family, as an extension of our family. So we have created a team of people on campus who are available to help hear them out and provide some counseling session should the need arise. So those numbers, that group of people is available time to time, for these students or for parents, should they feel the need to connect. So that has worked very well with our extended family. And it has been much appreciated and well used, I would say. So, so these are some of the practices that we have adopted and have helped us work better. We feel that partnering with the parents goes a long way. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Again, and just to finish off this part of the discussion, to go to Penjo from the Royal Academy, again, just thinking about what strategies or practices you might have used recently that you think might help shape the future of learning.
The strategies the good thing for us was that we were able to continue our lessons on the 5 areas of development and the non-silo. So we were still following our own philosophy, where we are not teaching the students the content, rather than teaching them the 5 areas, how they can go into the community and help the community. So all these things we were able to continue. And so during this COVID, what we learned was, rather than teaching them the contents, it was much more important to teach them the soft skills, like the interpersonal skills, how to communicate, and also help them to learn how to adapt. I think this is the first time that our students were exposed to such kind of situation, where they had to learn either through the WhatsApp, or they had to receive assignments from Google Classroom. So it was something very new for them. But it was an opportunity both for the teachers and even for the students to learn, I think, and adapt. I think that was the biggest takeaway from this situation. And so what we have also done was, all the teachers here, we also designed individualized assignments and learning experiences. And the most interesting thing was that it was targeted for different mediums. Like some of the learning experiences were made into emails or shared through Google Classrooms. Some were shared through WhatsApps. Some were delivered through Zoom. And we also had to consider those students who didn't have any access to anything, especially the devices or internet. So we had to send them postal. So we had to send them packages of assignments collected from all the teachers and the mentors who take the initiative of posting that assignments to the respective students. So these were the strategies that we have used. And while going through all these things, and one very important question that we had to ask ourselves was, what is the minimum technology that we require to deliver an effective learning experience? So I think that's something that we can't say which was most effective, whether the postal or whether the email or the Google Classroom or the Zoom, which one was the most effective one? So that was a question that we have been asking ourselves, and maybe with time we will know it also. And so while we are delivering the 5 areas of development, the learning experiences, so what our students were encouraged to do was take leadership role in their community. So most of the students who went back to their community were like remote places. So it was very important that they create awareness in their community, and maybe their parents or their relatives, they need to know about the COVID also. So that was that's one thing that we encourage our students to take leadership in making awareness to the student. It not necessarily like creating a gathering and not following the social distancing thing, but some ways, if possible, they can create awareness. And yeah, I think that's all. These are the few strategies that we employed here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Penja. Again, thank you to our 5 panelists. The time is never long enough to be able to discuss these issues. All 5 of you had made some really, really interesting points and thought-provoking ideas and challenges also to how the future of learning might go forward. What I would like to do now is spend about 10 minutes addressing some questions that have come from our participants who've been very active on the chat function, which again I would like to say thank you for. Some really interesting discussions going on there. Just in case anyone still would like to add some of their ideas, on the chat function there is a link that's been shared where you can either put questions or ideas or comments or thoughts that might have come to you while taking part in this process that we would really love for people to take part in and use. There's been quite a few questions that have addressed the mental health of teachers and of students, and something that people have felt maybe has been overlooked or has been much more reactive rather than responsive in this pandemic situation. And just thinking going forward, if we start to have ideas of augmented learning where there might be more classes that are online or remote or distance somehow, and there's not as much teacher-student interaction or peer-to-peer interaction, what mechanisms can schools or educators and teachers use to aid the mental well-being of their students? And I also want to add in of themselves as well, because someone quite rightly put out that teachers also need to be our learners and need to ensure their mental well-being also. So again, I'll just repeat that question, and I'll put it to the panelists. Unfortunately, I won't be able to come to everyone for this, so if there's anyone who strongly feels that they have something they can share or ideas or thoughts about this, then please make yourself known and we'll come to you first. Again, the question is, what mechanisms as school leaders can we put in place to ensure the mental well-being of learners and of teachers, especially from some of them who may be struggling at home at the moment or might do in the future? So is any of the panelists would like to have a go at sharing any ideas among that?
I would like to add here.
Go ahead.
So I'll go to two. I saw Kamal from the Doon School's hand go up first. So if I can jump to Kamal, and then I think Samita jumped in second. So if we could go to Kamal first and then Samita, please, to answer that question.
So the question that you brought out is very pertinent. When we were devising, and I've got one of my colleagues who's in charge of the timetable. When we started making the timetable for online classes, and I'm just talking about the point of view from academic learning, and it's nothing to do with sports program or anything else. We first of all took our own situations and saw what our schedules were like. Now that we were in a lockdown mode, what were the challenges we were facing? We all have families, and what do we have to do to support our families? What do we have to do to support our kids? Having said that, we also got some feedback from some parents. We started talking to them. We said, we are moving to this online mode. We took about 3 or 4 days before we actually started off the first phase of online lessons. It ran for a week. We took feedback. People said this were the challenges, this went well. Till we came and arrived at a consensus where we presented something which seemed more or less acceptable to everyone. So one of the ways of taking this forward is a continuous dialogue. It's a sustained dialogue. We will need to keep doing that along with parents, with colleagues, and of course with our students. We have to be very mindful that the mental well-being and the mental health is also something which can really improve if we are able to support each other. And we've talked about knowledge communities. So knowledge communities are not only meant to share knowledge, but they're also meant to share emotions. They're also meant to share experiences. And within those communities, there should be outlet forums for people who are unable to cope with it, to talk to someone, to realize strategies. And everyone needs to know that it's a learning curve for everybody. Once the students know that my teacher is uncertain about it, it does bring a lot of sense of comfort also, because it shows that your teacher is human. Once the parent comes to you and say, look, I'm dealing with this, it becomes very comforting for the teacher to say, even I'm dealing with this. And the student says, even I'm dealing with this. The 3 of us are dealing with it. Let's bring our minds together and create a solution. One of the things that did come up on the chat was, how do you co-opt parents into this learning process? Some parents have different schedules. Unless and until one parent is a high earner, the other one cannot leave their job, whatever that is. The fact is, you don't have to bring parents into every single part of the learning process. You create the opportunities and open it up to them. So for us, whatever communication strategies we have at this point of time, we make sure that a letter goes out saying, dear students and parents. Everything is dear students and parents, which means we're addressing you together. For us, it's you as a family unit that matters. Once we adopt this approach, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of feedback, and more importantly, there's going to be a lot of scaffolding that will take place together. That's important.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kamal. And then I think Samita, do you have anything that you would like to add to that also?
Yes, I would like to add here that in order to look at the mental health of the teachers, or rather the entire community, like I've shared earlier, that we have these groups of teachers. That is one thing that we do. Another is that we have a webinar planned for all the community. When I say community, I mean teachers, parents, students, everybody. which is about managing emotions during lockdown. So this is again a platform for everyone to vent out or to address or to speak about what has been their state. Like Kamal said, that while planning the timetable, these things were taken into consideration, each one's role and responsibility. Likewise, through a digital platform, we had one teacher dealing with a larger number of students, in terms of transaction, but then smaller groups of students were divided amongst other teachers. So the responsibility was divided. Each one had more time on hand, and therefore the personal aspect was also dealt with. Now, being a boarding school community, almost every staff member at the moment during lockdown has been on campus for us. So the well-being and mental well-being of the families was also in a way responsibility of the school. And so we have these very interesting sessions planned for the families, for the kids, different classes, different spiritual sessions, interactive sessions, painting sessions, Zumba classes, things like that, which are exclusive only to the teachers or their families, which have really taken away a huge amount of stress and helped us work better as a community. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Samita. Kamal touched on this actually just earlier on, and it was one of the questions that's come up quite a lot, was we've mentioned a lot about having parents as co-creators. And again, a lot of questions have come up about how do we do this in situations where we have parents who both work 9-to-5 jobs. We have parents who maybe don't have the knowledge or the skills themselves to feel confident in order to work or collaborate with their children. So I'm just wondering, and this might be the last question that we're able to touch on right now, if anyone would like to add, again, any strategies or frameworks or thoughts that they have around that. And I know Kamal has mentioned that already, so I'd just like to put it out to the other 4 panelists in terms of helping us collaborate with parents. How do we feel that moving forward in the future of learning, both now during the pandemic, but as we move out of the pandemic in the years to come, how are we able to bring parents along with us on that journey? Is there anyone who'd like to touch on that briefly? Julie? I think a hand went up there, so I'd like to hand over to Julie again from the Paradise Valley School.
The partnership, as I said, with the parents is one of the greatest things that have come with this. While there are struggles, and we have parents who actually travel for work and the second parent works, so this leaves the education up to nannies or grandparents who may not possess the skills to be effective. However, we do plan to continue either through a digital medium or within the school, depending on circumstances as they progress and parent interest. We do plan to continue building that relationship, developing that relationship, and helping parents develop the skill set to manage education at the home. As we know, children react very differently to their parents than they do teachers. And this has been quite an eye-opening experience for both teachers and parents as they experience what it's like to teach their children. And as the teachers see the relationship or interaction between the parents. So it has brought to the forefront some of the struggles and some of the difficulties, but it also has motivated many of the parents to ask questions and seek support in helping build these skills. So an ongoing educational platform for our school where we work with parents and help support and develop these skill sets that will allow them to be active and effective participants in their child's education is something that we are definitely looking at and feel will be important as education goes forward. That partnership must be strong and it must be part of the educational program or process. It can't be, we drop the kids off, you do it, and then we pick them up at the end of the day. It must be a partnership, and we must work together in order to achieve the best results with our children.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
that's our process.
Yeah, and someone mentioned again on the chat there that context is incredibly important as well. We have parents, their emotional well-being. At this point in time, we have lots of people who've lost their jobs, whose livelihoods have changed as well. So there's a huge amount that goes on in a parent's life as well, and making sure we have that dialogue and that open communication that both Kamal and Julie have mentioned is incredibly important. What I'd like to do now, again, just conscious of time, and really appreciate everybody's comments and thoughts on the chat and from our panelists, is I'd just like to go back to the panelists individually for, if possible, a minute or so, just to round up either a takeaway from this discussion, or something that's excited you, or something that a new idea that you think you might run forward with. I mean, I'll start. For me, this idea of community knowledge and the creation of community knowledge, both physical and online, I think is a very exciting prospect, and thinking about how we can augment or blend that online community with the physical community as well, to me is something that I think is quite exciting and quite something that I would like to move forward and look at. So that's one of my takeaways. Among many of the other brilliant things that have been said, it's impossible to sum them up in a minute, but hopefully if we could just go around and maybe have some of those key ideas that people have taken. And also for the participants, if there's something that you think was a key takeaway that is worth looking into more, please share that with us on the chats. There's a link there for you to go into also. Because these ideas this is what this discussions are about. What are these ideas that we want to take forward? So again, I'll stick with the same order. I'll go back to Kamal, and just anything that you feel is exciting, scary from this discussion.
So again, a lot of governments and a lot of state and local authorities across the world have always they've taken a very precautionary approach to this entire pandemic situation that you have right now. So this pandemic that's raging across the globe, everybody is looking at it very differently. What I think needs to be done, and especially with schools and institutions, is on one hand, you have this precautionary approach, which is great, and we should all stick to it. But at the same time, we need a very proactive managing approach. So we now need to come up with strategies where we can proactively manage this situation, because this isn't going to disappear overnight. It's probably going to be here till 2022, 2023. Universities across the globe are beginning to already announce the kind of courses they're going to deliver, and most of them are going online. A lot of them are going online, not most of them, but a lot of them are going online. Cambridge University has said something about it. Harvard has said something on one of the law school's courses. So if this is happening, it's already beginning to show that even at school level, we need to start devising a strategy, and we need to start building a program which is long-term, but at the same time, it has to move from a defensive mechanism to an aggressive management state. I don't use the word aggressive in a negative way, but I'm using it in a very proactive way. That's what I would say. And my biggest takeaway is this partnership opportunity with parents and grandparents and extended families is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I think we need to grab it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kamal. Matab from Pallavan School, what would be your biggest takeaway or excitement from the discussion today?
My biggest takeaway, actually, what Kamal has said, the parent and the partnership with the parents and grandparents and all the school communities. Actually, this was one. And another thing, actually, the biggest learning is empathetic delivery of curriculum. Actually, it's not only marks basis or knowledge basis or something, but empathetic delivery of curriculum, one of the panelists said. And apart from that, the education doesn't mean only academic, rather than life skill and soft skill things. These are the two things, actually, and I am very much firm about life skills and 5 areas of development thing, because learning continues and continues. You can learn from internet, you can learn from book and all this thing, but the life skill education of 5-year development thing, this is very important thing which needs to be imparted to the students and to the teachers also. We also need to learn that many times we also lose our anger and all these things. So these are the very important things.
Brilliant, thank you, Mahtab. And then to Julie, same question.
Okay. What I've taken away is that like the boundaries of nations, which are quickly disappearing, as we can see through this pandemic, it has affected the entire world in the same way, both for health, economic, etc. So like that, the walls of the classroom are no longer sufficient to encompass the development of the skills needed by the next generation. So we cannot consider the needs of education without considering the changing future and our current situation. So we do need to find ways. So I've expressed a lot of the concerns and the difficulties, but we do need to find a way. I feel that we need possibly a global committee who can look at what strategies are being used in different areas, different communities, that can provide us with that sustainable and dynamic interaction that is so necessary to develop holistically our children. And we must model what we're expecting from our children. We must be creative problem solvers. We must be researchers, lifelong learners, as we strive to keep up with these ever-changing demands in the educational realm. So this will require schools to provide training opportunities, materials, supplies, flexibility. But in doing this, we do have to be careful to respect the well-being of staff members and family members, and be careful not to overwhelm in these trying times.
Brilliant, thank you, Julie. Samita, again, your takeaways from today.
I have two very quick points to make. My two takeaways here are, I don't want to call it online learning or distance education. I want to call it learning from home. So learning from home is here to stay, and all stakeholders must contribute in the education of the child. That is one. Second being, keep your head in a crisis. So we learn to manage our emotions, finances, education, everything effectively and dynamically in order to sustain. Those are my takeaways. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Samita. And then Penjo, again, what are your takeaways from today's discussion?
I have lots of takeaways and some questions that I will be working on also. The first thing that when we're talking about the future of learning, I think it usually involves the use of technology, and that is where this is the takeaway that I'm like, how we balance the use of technology and the face-to-face interaction. So that would be one. And since it involves a lot of use of internet and all, so how we also need to look at how we make the guidelines for the ethics and how to behave in the internet, or how during the lessons. And another one that some of you mentioned, the strategies to involve parents. I think we need to also look at how we can involve the parents and enrich the curriculum. And then another one would be the assessment. So how we will be doing the daily assessment or a monthly assessment, or how will we do the exams. So these are things that we want to look at. And the most and very important to me, and this would be looking at rather than covering the concepts and the contents, I would think it is very important that we should also teach our students, the learners, how to be emotionally available and socially available for their families, and just be part of what's happening rather than just getting engrossed in the concepts. So those are the takeaways. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Penjo. I would like to thank our 5 panelists again. As I mentioned, I've got pages of notes now. I think this is, as Kamal mentioned, a very exciting time in education, and that obviously what is happening around the world right now is something that is disrupted a lot of people's lives and their livelihoods. But I think it's also important that we look at some of the opportunities that it's creating, and to be able to think about how to move forward in that future of education. I'd also like to thank our participants who've been using the chat function on here. Again, there's some great comments. I'm afraid we don't have time to read them all on screen or maybe address all those questions, but we are collating those comments where we've got as shared, there was a link there that you can keep putting your ideas on or your questions on, because again, this is what this platform is for. As Pallavan Learning Systems, we're looking at researching these ideas and seeing how we can take learning forward in the future. So again, just like to say thank you to our panelists, thank you to our participants, and if there is anything else that you'd like to add, please put it there again on the chat function at the end, on the chat function. So I think we'll sign off now. We might have already done so, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.